Okay, in this lesson we're going to go into operations of decimals. So we're going to add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimals, and we're going to end this lesson with scientific notation. I want to go for just a bit to lead forward and kind of look about where we start working with the addition and subtraction of decimals, as well as the multiplication and division. So we're going to take just a second and go over to the Lead Forward website. Okay, so I just want to show you a little bit of the progression. So we'll see in third grade, we have the addition and subtractions, whole number comparison, fractions, addition and subtraction of whole numbers, multiplication and division of whole numbers, some geometry, some measurement. So we don't see a category here in third grade for decimals. But when you go into fourth grade, if you look at the standards for fourth grade, we now have a whole section here over decimals where we will begin adding and subtracting whole numbers and decimals to the hundredths place. And so we use the standard algorithm, which we are going to go over. And then you can take some time if you want to go on to Lead Forward and look at all of the supporting standards also that we use with decimals as well. You'll notice here the expanded notation, which we did in the last lesson, and just comparing and ordering whole numbers. And we also see here using visual models to the hundredths, which we did with those base 10 blocks, and we're about to do that again. You'll notice if you go into fifth grade, you see a very good section here over decimals as well. And you could take some time to look into that, but you'll see here, you can look at this 5.3G, solve for the quotient of decimals. So you start that division of decimals and the multiplication of decimals in fifth grade. You can go over here and kind of look and see where we're still using some of those pictorial models, area models with decimals. We're going to talk some more about that. And you could even go into sixth grade and continue to look at. So I just wanted to show you on Lead Forward what that looks like before we go back to our notes, because I think Lead Forward is an excellent place to go and look and compare the different standards that are taught in the different grade levels. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we would teach adding and subtracting decimals using those base 10 blocks. And the first thing that I always want you to do when we're using those base 10 blocks is to define the value of the blocks. And so if you'll recall from the last lesson, the smallest place value will always be the small cube. And so the small cube for this particular problem will represent a hundredth, because a hundredth is the smallest place value in the problem. 2 and 16 hundredths, 1 and 73 hundredths. And so that would make, in this particular problem, a long, once again, representing a tenth. So 10 of those hundreds represents a 10, so you could trade in place value. And then a flat in this particular problem would represent the ones place. And again, I always apologize for my writing on this screen, but be sure on your problems, on your exam, and on your homework that you define the value of those blocks. So when we model the addition using the base 10 blocks, we're going to draw it out. The first one, we're going to have 1, 2, decimal point, 1/10, and then we'll have 6 hundredths. So that's 2 and 16 hundredths. We are adding to that 1 and 73. So I have to draw 7 of those longs, and I'm already doing a terrible job. I'm sure you guys will draw them much better than I will. So 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we have 3 hundredths. And we're going to model the addition of those. Now, when we do add those, when we combine, we would add our hundredths with our hundredths. So we have 6 of those small cubes plus 3 of those small cubes, which would give me 9. And I'm not going to have you write the answer in base 10 blocks. We're just using the base 10 blocks to combine blocks to get the summation. So we have 6 of those, and 3 of those is 9 of those. As far as the longs, how many tenths do we have? We have 1 long and 7 longs, giving me 8 longs, which is 8 tenths. And then ones, we have 2 and 1, which is 3. So the summation for this problem is 3 and 89 hundredths. 3 ones, 8 tenths, and 9 hundredths. And your students could look at those pieces and, they're going to have a very good visual to show them that. Now, if we ever did go over 9, we would have to trade in pieces, and I'm going to model that for you here in the next problem. And you're going to have some of these like this in your homework as well as on your exam. So this is something you want to pay very close attention to, and I would make yourself a note to come back and study this particular problem for the test. Now, we've already defined the value of these blocks, but I'm going to redraw this problem. This is 1, 2, and 1/10, and 6 hundredths. And now we're subtracting 1, and we're going to subtract 7 tenths from that. This is where I apologize for my drawing. And then we have 3. And actually, I'm probably going to end up writing the answer over on the other side because I kind of drew those too big and I'm out of space. So when we do subtraction, we have 6 of those smaller cubes and we're taking 3 away. And so that's easy for your students to do and to see that I have 6. You're going to start with 6 and you're going to remove 3. And you can even mark those out for your students. Hopefully your students are going to have those pieces in front of them. So when you have 6 and you take 3 away, then you're left with 3 of those hundredths. The problem on the tenths is you can't take 7 tenths away from 1/10. And so this is where you have to do some borrowing, and this is where I really need you to model this and draw this. When we come over and borrow from here, and I want you to even make yourself a note that we're going to borrow. When we borrow from this 1, we get 10 more of those longs. And so you'll need to come up here and model drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and those should all be the same size and look much better than they do. But it should be you're adding 10 of those longs. So now you have 11 of those longs and you're removing 7. But to get credit on the exam for this, you have to show the borrowing. You have to show adding the 10 more and draw the 10 more to give 11 and take 3 away. When you do that, not 3 away, 7 away. When you do that, 11 minus 7 is going to leave you with 4. And then in the ones place, you have 1 take 1 away. So when you have 1 and you subtract 1, you don't have any. So your answer here is 43 hundredths. But I would especially be sure to study this problem. Now if we move on, after you have modeled the addition and subtraction very well with base 10 blocks, where you're trading in, whether that's carrying or borrowing, where you're trading in those pieces, like, oh, I need to borrow, so I'm going to borrow from that flat and I'm going to get 10 longs. That also works in the reverse manner. If when you're adding you get more than 10 of one piece, then you're going to carry that and trade it in for the piece higher up. And so you can model that for a while with base 10 blocks. After a while, you will go to what we call the standard algorithm, which is basically after they've done it with the blocks for a while, they understand that to add and subtract decimals, it's just like adding and subtracting whole numbers, but they have to line up the place value and the decimal vertically. So to work this next problem, which is the same problem that we just did, we have 2 and 16 hundredths. And we're adding 1 and 73 hundredths. And notice there I lined up the place values and I lined up the decimals. 6 and 3 is 9, 7 and 1 is 8, and 1 and 2 is 3. And we get the same answer that we did above of 3 and 89 hundredths. On number 2, we'll work it in a very similar way. 2 and 16 hundredths, subtracting 1 and 73 hundredths. Lining up place value, lining up decimals when you're adding and subtracting decimals. 6 minus 3 is 3. We cannot take 7 from 1, so we borrow 1, giving me 10 more, making that 11 tenths minus 7 tenths, which is 4 tenths, and then 1 minus 1 is nothing, giving me an answer of 43 hundredths. We're going to do 2 more of those where we're just going to add or subtract based on what the problem shows, lining up our decimal, lining up our place value. So we have 5 8/10, subtracting 3 73/100. And when you're teaching this, do not say point. Be sure that you say the place value so that when you line it up, you can subtract it or add it evenly, and the students keep carrying, oh, that's 5 8/10, which is 5 8/10, and it's very easy for them to go to a fraction. 3 73/100 is 3 73/100 to very quickly go to being a fraction. Now here we do have to fill in a place value with a 0, and that's something you will have to teach your students as well, because we don't have any hundreds here, which means we're going to put 0 in for the hundreds place. We do need to borrow to get 7. So now I have 10 hundredths minus 3 hundredths is 7. 7 minus 7 is 0, and then 5 minus 3 is 2. This answer is 2 7/100. We don't want to say 2.07. If we needed to make this answer a fraction, it would be 2 and then 7/100. On the last one like this, number 4, you should recall from previous lessons that the 2 negatives here become a positive. And so this is negative 19 6/10 plus 4 135 thousandths. And we notice here that the sign of these two numbers are different. And so when we have a negative and a positive that we're combining, if the signs are different, we end up subtracting the absolute value of the numbers and then keeping the sign of the larger. And we've done that quite a bit in previous lessons. So we're going to subtract these. We have to fill in 2 place value holders here. So we're going to take 19 6/10 and we're going to subtract 4 135 thousandths. So I borrow from the 6 to get 5, gives me 10 here. I borrow from the 10 to get 9, gives me 10 here. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 3 is 6. 5 minus 1 is 4. 19 minus 4 is 15. But the answer is negative because my larger number was negative. So after I subtract, I should know that I had more negatives, giving me an answer of negative 15 465 thousandths. All right, that's going to be the end of this first video. The next video is going to go into multiplying decimals.